Hi, my name is Matthew Jester, and this video is Hypnosis and Drawings, part 2 of 2. So, I have a certificate of completion just showing that I'm certified and competent in the field of hypnosis. This is from Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. And get started with my introduction. Please watch my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. I will leave a link to watch the video in the description. I will also leave additional links in the description of other relevant videos. I've been abused with hypnosis, and my ability to speak is being inhibited with hypnosis, which is why I have to read everything when I make videos. If you notice me stuttering, speaking slowly, being unable to speak clearly like I am now, or any other difficulty speaking, I explain in detail the specific methods and techniques that are being used to inhibit my ability to speak in my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. These issues speaking occur consistently in each of my videos, specifically within the first 3 minutes. The hypnosis inhibiting my ability to speak is often very noticeable throughout my videos, and I will leave a list of the various hypnotic commands that are specifically being used to inhibit my ability to speak that can be recognized in my body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and speech patterns in the description. And in the last video, I explained how I was hypnotized to draw as a method of concealing my ability to write being inhibited by hypnosis, and in this video, I'm going to show some examples of the drawings in detail, explaining the picture symbolism and how the pictures are evidence that an organized crime operation used hypnosis to discreetly premeditate death threats to the celebrity Billie Eilish. This is the article that I'm referencing. This is the celebrity. This is from TMZ. They actually have the copies of the actual death threat letters. If you wanted to take a look at them for yourself, you can feel free to download them off their website. Go ahead and get started. So, the drawings and the letters were simple enough for almost anyone to be able to draw. Several drawings referenced religions such as crosses. None of the drawings were threatening and were very unusual and abnormal to be included in death threat letters. To the extent that it raised suspicion for me that he was hypnotized to draw the pictures like I was. The pictures in the letters cued specific metaphors, I was told, when I was hypnotized, indicating even the pictures John Matthew Hurrell drew were premeditated. The metaphors were divided into confusing and vague segments over several hours, and my memory was repressed of each metaphor before I was cued to remember the next metaphor. This was done to make the metaphors seem insignificant as evidence, so that I wouldn't write it down. The drawings reminded me of what I discussed in the last video of where I was hypnotized to draw on the walls of the jail, and I was hypnotized to think that drawing on the walls of the jail was worshiping the devil, and that the pictures were like hieroglyphs. I was hypnotized to think of pyramids when I saw the triangles drawn in the letters, and then I was hypnotized to think the triangles or pyramid on fire meant child slave labor, and to think of the song Cradles by Suburban when I saw the fire. I was hypnotized to think the pyramid on fire meant child slave labor because the album cover for the song Cradles was a cradle on fire. And the cradle was supposed to reference children, and also because it was once believed that the pyramids were built by slaves before they found out evidence indicating otherwise. But I'll go ahead and just show some very quick examples of some of these drawings I'm referencing. So there's one. That one looks almost more like a diagram. Here is two. Up there at the top. Very simple drawing. And here is the third one. Again, another very simple drawing up there in the corner. And with the fourth one, you can see it's up there at the top. Another thing I wanted to point out was, and this is obviously very elaborate too if you really want to go into the details, so that bottom line of the triangle shape makes it look more like a three-dimensional object, like a pyramid, instead of just a two-dimensional triangle, because of how the bottom portion of it is pointed downwards. It could be a two-dimensional diamond or a three-dimensional pyramid, just depending on how you look at it. I don't know what it's actually supposed to be either, necessarily, but moving on. Let's see, so there's some more pictures here. These ones, I mean, this could be a variety of things. Looks like it could represent fire or something along those lines. And then the next picture is going to be this one specifically. So the flower is labeled Lucifer, as you can see. Also another name for the devil. And let's see. So, I was hypnotized to think, quote, did you SpongeBob her? When I saw the flower labeled Lucifer. And then I was hypnotized to think of kelp because SpongeBob references kelp a few times in his cartoons. This made sense because the flower petals somewhat resembled kelp, like in the cartoon, but it didn't make sense why the flower was labeled Lucifer or the devil. And then I was hypnotized to think it was because kelp is also known as seaweed, and to think of a cartoon parody I've seen of SpongeBob called SpongeBong, referencing marijuana in the parody because weed is known as the devil's lettuce. And since the flower was seaweed, the flower was the devil. One of the political petitions and programs it designed was to legalize marijuana, and hypnosis was used to stop me, which is why the flower drawing and marijuana metaphor was used to specifically reference my situation. There are some more drawings, and on the last page, these do look more like diagrams, meaning that the pictures definitely most likely represented something, even though some may have been rather insignificant, but definitely enough to raise suspicion. So moving on from that, this is a list of the various pictures I was hypnotized to draw, and this would be cued in various different circumstances. Some were just in the drawings while I was in jail. Others were specifically while I was writing to interrupt me from completing a piece of writing, such as the top stick figures, actually, that you can see in the lettering there. And then this also has a backside. There are a few pictures that are not included on this in total. So you can see I was actually hypnotized to do quite a bit. I will explain these in further detail. These are what the pictures would come out to look like in the end. Some examples. I did have to censor some of this stuff just because, like, there's some things like specifically song lyrics that could be considered a copyright violation, and I couldn't risk having anything happen. This is an example of the hypnosis being used to interrupt me from completing a writing. Let's see, I also have another example with actually the stick figures that I was referencing earlier. This one is quite elaborate, and it is referencing, actually, this is actually a witness statement for a murder that I witnessed. This happened halfway through. Obviously, it's a huge distraction from what the actual writing says as well. Which fortunately for me is actually more incriminating than if it was just plain ordinary handwriting. And also, even on some postcards I was hypnotized to draw. Let me see. Unfortunately, most of the drawings are not very legible anymore, but I'll go ahead and get back to these later. So, put these to the side for right now. And I'm going to start reading. So this is about the a little bit of education on what exactly hypnosis is and how it works. In hypnosis, there is a concept known as the critical faculty, which is responsible for processing, interpreting, analyzing, and questioning information before acceptance into the unconscious mind. Children under the age of 7 have underdeveloped critical faculties that readily accept information without questioning, processing, analyzing, or interpreting the information. An example of this would be how children believe in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and the Tooth Fairy. In the hypnotic trance called somnambulism, which is commonly seen in stage hypnosis shows, the critical faculty can be less capable of rejecting information than that of a small child's. So, you could hypnotize somebody to cluck like a chicken, but you can't tell a small child to cluck like a chicken necessarily. and achieve the same results. So that's where a person can has less capability of rejecting suggestions in that deep stage trance. So anyways, this story sounds difficult to believe, although with an understanding of how hypnosis works, with what I just described and the phenomena that hypnosis can produce, it's easy to understand how they were able to get me to believe the story using hypnosis. So the people that hypnotized me impersonated the Make-A-Wish Foundation as well. I was told that I was going to make a movie for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and that the Make-A-Wish Foundation was going to give me everything I wanted. I was told that they were going to hypnotize someone to commit suicide to prevent me from committing suicide. I was told that all I needed to do was ensure to buy him cigarettes and he wouldn't kill himself. But if he didn't have cigarettes, that he was going to think that the Mexican cartel was going to kill him. McKay Cody James discussed feelings of suicide and fears that the Mexican cartel was going to kill him before he killed himself. I found his body hanging from a tree while looking for a tree to hang myself on to commit suicide. This actually worked to prevent me from using the noose knot I had already tied to commit suicide prior to finding his body, because I had to call the police and file a police report. When I first found his body, I didn't know I found a dead body and thought it was a Halloween decoration that was left out hanging from a tree. I found a large branch and poked his stomach to see if his stomach decompressed. It didn't. It was actually very stiff, but when I got close enough, I smelled a strong odor and saw maggots crawling out of his face, which was blue and purple, completely unable to recognize his face. I checked his wallet for ID, which read McKay Cody James, and called the police after washing my hands. I returned to the camp after I finished talking to the police, and I discovered my friend who mysteriously disappeared one day, named Cody, actually introduced himself to me by his middle name because his full name was McKay Cody James. After discovering I didn't just poke a dead body with a stick, I poked my dead friend with a stick. I developed an eating disorder and PTSD from it. I was hypnotized to believe that my friend died because of a freak accident during the movie production instead of him being murdered with hypnosis. I was hypnotized to think it was my fault he committed suicide because I didn't buy him cigarettes, but at the time, I didn't even know he was hypnotized, let alone hypnotized to commit suicide without cigarettes. Since I was already taking tranquilizer medication and frequently visited the emergency room, I was hypnotized to think the tranquilizer medication Klonopin meant it's not my fault, and that the tranquilizer medication Valium meant I didn't know. I was hypnotized to think any emergency room visit was a movie scene, and that these medications were supposed to represent different movie scripts. That it's not my fault meant it's not my fault I wanted to kill him. And that I didn't know meant I didn't know he was hypnotized to commit suicide if I didn't buy him cigarettes. I was also hypnotized to think Klonopin meant I was making movie scenes, and that Valium meant an emergency medical intervention for my, quote, movie. I was hypnotized to believe that hypnosis was inhibiting me because I didn't care enough about Cody in an attempt to abuse me for witnessing his murder without me knowing it. Since I sincerely cared about Cody, the post-hypnotic suggestion to believe otherwise was completely ineffective, which cued the post-hypnotic suggestion to think that I shouldn't think about my dead friend so much during my movie, because then people would find out that someone died making my movie for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. The people that hypnotized me also threatened me for talking about my dead friend. I was threatened that they were going to use my innocence regarding the situation with my dead friend Cody to make Donald Trump seem innocent and frame me for it. I was also hypnotized to think that my dead friend smelled, quote, fragrant before eating to keep me from eating. I was framed for assault charges I didn't commit using hypnosis to ensure I was in the right place at the right time so I could get framed without me knowing it, and so hypnosis could be used to inhibit my ability to speak and write so that I couldn't defend myself in the court of law or consult with an attorney. I was framed to prevent me from filing a medical malpractice lawsuit and to prevent me from ending up on the news because of it. In Cache County Sheriff's Office, there is a policy through the local mental health authority, Bear River Mental Health, that there are no controlled substances prescribed in the jail, so the only way I could get the medications I needed for my medical conditions was by hospitalizing myself, which would require obtaining an injury. The only way I would have been able to obtain an injury would be to jump off a flight of stairs and break my legs, which is why I was hypnotized to draw flights of stairs and medications. While in jail, the hypnosis was used to treat my PTSD and hyperventilation syndrome without any record of my medical conditions being treated to prevent me from getting medical malpractice or ending up on the news. I was hypnotized to draw different medications that were each supposed to represent specific things. I was also hypnotized to draw mountains and stairs, which also had very specific meanings. I was hypnotized to think drawing Klonopin pills meant I had a contract with Bear River Mental Health and that I could get mental health court to get me out of jail to prevent a very serious medical malpractice lawsuit since Bear River Mental Health wouldn't give me my medications while in jail. I was hypnotized to think that Klonopin represented Bear River Mental Health because Bear River Mental Health used to prescribe me Klonopin, and it would result in an extremely serious lawsuit if I had to jump off a flight of stairs, break my legs, and hospitalize myself because Bear River Mental Health wouldn't give me medications in jail. I was hypnotized to imagine that if I got approved for Bear River Mental Health Court, it would be like I'd be going to court with a bear named Baloo from the movie The Jungle Book protecting me from breaking my legs because Bear River Mental Health would let me out of jail. I was also hypnotized to imagine the bottom pencil strokes in the K inscription on the Klonopin pill were legs, and that if I didn't get approved for Bear River Mental Health Court, that the legs were broken. I was also hypnotized to think that the reason Bear River Mental Health wanted to prevent me from breaking my legs was because if I broke my spinal cord on accident jumping off a flight of stairs, I could become paralyzed for the rest of my life, and that the lawsuit could cost Bear River Mental Health $300 million. That's the specific number. I think I was also hypnotized to remember the amount of $300 million by adding a 0 to the number inscription on the Adderall pill I was hypnotized to draw, which was 30. I was hypnotized to think drawing Valium pills meant I had a contract with Intermountain Healthcare for a discrete medical malpractice settlement agreement. I was hypnotized to draw a little stick figure climbing a mountain, and I was hypnotized to think that if I wanted the jail time to be sentenced over my head so that I could be released from the jail, that I should draw a little arm over the stick figure's head. I was hypnotized to think the mountains meant Intermountain Healthcare, and that the stick figure climbing the mountain was me trying to get healthcare. I was hypnotized to think that if I actually had medical malpractice and if I wanted healthcare, that as long as I didn't sue him or talk about anything related to medical malpractice, that I could plead no contest in court and get the jail time sentenced over my head so that I could go to the hospital to get healthcare, and that he would give me 50% of the company, and all that I had to do was go to the emergency room and ask for Valium. I was also hypnotized to think that the message goes right over little Billy's head after drawing the little arm over the stick figure's head, and that the stick figure was little Billy. This was done because the metaphor itself is a hypnotic suggestion implying that if I wanted or needed to get healthcare, that I needed to plead no contest in court, and the stick figure was named Little Billy just to confuse me so that I wouldn't know I was being deceived. In this context, I was hypnotized to think Little Billy was a metaphor referring to a young child that would be watching the movie about me produced by the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Similar to how John Doe is commonly used as a metaphor to reference a male's name, and Jane Doe is a commonly used metaphor to reference a female's name. The metaphor was used to make me believe the unfortunate circumstances that I couldn't get the medical care I needed in jail would go right over little Billy's head, so that I would portray so that I wouldn't portray the image that the Make-A-Wish Foundation was scary, as a method of instilling the belief that the message would be going over someone else's head and not mine. If you know how hypnosis works, then I mean you really understand how that works as well. I was hypnotized to draw a scored Adderall tablet with the number 30 inscribed on the pill and a series of short horizontal lines behind the pill to make the pill look like it was a spinning football. When I first drew it, I was hypnotized to think, throw me an Adderall, and after I drew it, I was hypnotized to imagine my nephew saying, throw me a football, and to imagine throwing my nephew a football. I was also hypnotized to imagine my grandma yelling, woohoo, touchdown, and my grandbaby is a genius. I was hypnotized to think that the 30 milligram Adderall meant that if I sent my grandmother $300 for rent money and sent her the postcard with a 30 milligram Adderall on it, that my grandma would help get me out of jail because it was in the contract with the Make-A-Wish Foundation that Donald Trump would pay her $300 million for it. I was also hypnotized to think that the Make-A-Wish Foundation was like a game show. Money all around. When I thought about how I was hypnotized to draw an Adderall pill like a football, I was hypnotized to think two-hand touch or tackle football. I was hypnotized to think of the eagle. I was hypnotized to draw, and I was hypnotized to remember the bald eagle baseball cap I wore when I got tackled by my brother-in-law, and how he knocked my baseball cap and sunglasses off the top of my head, because that's when I got framed for the aggravated assault charges I didn't commit. I put him in a headlock in self-defense. I was also intoxicated at the time, but I took Adderall right on cue to negate the hypnotic confusion I was experiencing, which also can negate the intoxicating effects of alcohol, including memory loss, which is why I remembered everything crystal clear. I was hypnotized to even draw a flight of stairs because it represented how I could have broken my legs and possibly even broke my spinal cord, becoming paralyzed for the rest of my life, jumping off a flight of stairs in jail because I couldn't get the medications I needed in jail. So, let's see, it was, on this postcard, see, this one's not dated, but this one is. You can see, August 26, 2020, with a stamp. Both of these postcards were unfortunately actually denied. You can definitely see, had, some difficulty with writing the return address and sending address, having room for it. What ended up happening was since I was hypnotized to draw on the front of the postcards, or right on the front of the postcards, I didn't have room to write the return and sending address in order to send them. I had to scratch out the drawings and writing on the front of the postcards in order to write very darkly the return address and sending address. So, anyways, you can see this one is, like almost kind of looks like yin and yang. It's actually supposed to be a crescent moon. This is supposed to be another crescent moon or half moon. Let's see, a couple like hearts, and let me see. You can see a Valium pill that I was hypnotized to draw right there, behind the end of the zip code, behind the number 1. And then, let's see. Can't exactly make out what that is, but And there's another portion of a pill that I was hypnotized to draw. I think that might have been a second volume I was hypnotized to draw, actually. And the Adderall tablet I was hypnotized to draw, I believe is covered up. Let's see. I don't think I see that anywhere on here. Because if I was able to see it at all, it would probably be underneath the return address, right in that little spot. Or it could have also been covered up by the sticker, but unfortunately, peeling off the sticker peeled off some of the postcards. So, regardless of such, moving on from that, I'll be describing some of the actual pictures here in a moment too. So, let's see, this was the last one. There we go. This is a brainwashing metaphor. So the hypnotist told me they were going to take me to the laundromat. I was hypnotized to feel dizziness, confusion, nausea, dysphoria, drowsiness, disorientation, and to experience memory loss whenever I resisted post-hypnotic suggestions. And I was hypnotized to feel like my brain was spinning in a washing machine on the spin cycle, turning to mush because they were, quote, brainwashing me. So, I was hypnotized to draw washing machines as a reference to the brainwashing metaphor I was told when I was hypnotized. That's resulted in a lot of hypnotic inhibition from the actual post-hypnotic suggestions. So, when I was in jail, I was hypnotized to draw coffins over mistakes in my handwriting since I wasn't given an eraser. When I was